right, good evening, everybody. I don't have reception here, so I won't be able to read all of everything here. But we had someone Ave Christus Rex, which is Latin for Hail the Anointed King. It seems this is probably a Catholic person addressing this, although it looks like their symbol, their watermark, there is some Hebrew letters. So, and again, I don't really have everything what they said, but this individual basically said, that if Moses were around today, he would not recognize Judaism, and that Judaism today was invented by Rabbi Akiva. So I responded as follows: you really put a lot of credit to one rabbi. I mean, Rabbi Akiva was great, and that's really an understatement. He was exceedingly great. But he didn't innovate anything. Yes, we have a homily where Moses said he couldn't understand the teachings of Rabbi Akiva, but that doesn't mean he single-handedly transformed our faith. And then I posed a question: do you think Jesus would recognize what goes on in any church today? So that was my approach. And now the truth is, I don't care if Jesus or Paul or Peter or anybody else would recognize what goes on in any church today. I also posed another question, which is not addressed here, but I said, also, with this question about, why don't we accept, isn't it enough? We 2,000 years, the temple was destroyed. Why don't we recognize what the Christians claim is the truth, that Jesus is Messiah and is our Messiah, not just Christian Messiah, but that he's a Jewish Messiah. It reminds me of there was the movie The Frisco Kid, right? And there was a Native American chief who was asking the rabbi to pray for rain. And the chief said something about your God. And the rabbi says, stop saying that. He's your God also. And the Indian chief said, we have enough problem with our own gods. Don't give us more to deal with. Right? And really, it's the same thing here. We have enough to deal with our own God. We have one God with our own religion. You don't have to give us more. To go and tell us that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah is ridiculous. Who are you to tell us this? And the interesting thing is, I know there are some monotheistic Native American tribes that claim that they do worship the same God that the Jews and Christians and Muslims worship. What the Christians, I guess, would say God the Father. And I know they say it's all one. It's one, it's three forms, or whatever it is. I'm not here really to discuss the finer points of that right now, but rather to address this interesting question. So the other thing I told this person is that, for you to tell me, ask me why don't I accept Jesus as the Jewish Messiah, my answer to you would be, well, why don't you accept Joseph Smith as a prophet? Why don't you accept Muhammad as a prophet? They both believed in Jesus. Joseph Smith professed to be a Christian. Why can't he be a prophet if that's the case? The Muslims also believe that Jesus is Messiah. Why can't Muhammad be a prophet? And the answer was that both the Book of Mormon and the Quran contradict what's already in the Bible. So my answer to that was, not only do the books that the Christians call New Testament that they added to our Bible not only do those books contradict our Bible, but they contradict themselves. And I love Christians, and I love Christianity, and I think it's a beautiful religion, and I think Islam and Mormonism are also beautiful religions. I just don't think they're true. But I think they're beautiful. I respect them. They've done all three of those religions brought a lot of good things to the world. And Buddhism has brought a lot of good things to the world. And Hinduism has brought a lot of good things to the world. And all of these have also brought a little bit of bad things to the world. But I don't focus just on the bad. I recognize a lot of good things. But that doesn't mean that they're true. And even if it helps people be better, that's really what I care about. Meaning, I recognize that this is helping people with their lives. Like the story on South Park. The boy Stan, he was very upset at the Mormons. And the Mormon boy said to him, this makes my family life better. This makes my whole life better. Why do you want to take it away from me? And so the same thing, I don't want to take Christianity away from any Christians. I don't want to take Islam away from any Muslims. I don't want to take Mormonism away from any Mormons. But some folks, not everybody, would like to take the Judaism away from me. I'm very friendly. I work, a co-worker, actually, someone who I supervise, who is a Catholic deacon. And he always says, I don't care what religion you are, as long as it brings you the same joy that my religion brings me.
In 1,000 feet, turn left onto Mill Street, signs for New York 17B East.
And so the same thing I'm saying, I don't care what religion you are. If it brings you joy, then I'm
in
very
400 feet, turn left onto Lower Main Street.
Just like, I don't expect...
Turn left onto Lower Main Street, then turn left to stay on Lower Main Street.
I don't expect you to feel about my wife and my family the way that I feel about my wife and my family.
Turn left to stay on Lower Main Street.
And I don't want to feel about your wife and your family the way you feel about your wife and your family.
Turn left onto Bridge Street, then turn left onto Dorer Drive.
Drive-through.
Continue on River Road for 3/4 of a mile.
I think it's just the lobby ATM. All right. So, let me park here. We'll pause this and then we'll get back to this. All right. So I'm back in my old town Callicoon, which has 2 bars and 1 saloon. Anyway, so this Ave Christus Rex responds as follows. He says, when I asked him, he's pondering that Moses would not recognize Judaism as it is today. So I asked, would Jesus recognize Christianity as it is today? Would he recognize the church as it is today? I remember I used to give lectures at Virginia Commonwealth University, Professor Smith's class on world religion. Professor Smith would always say, if Jesus would go to the Cathedral of the Sacred Heart there in Richmond, which is right around the block from VCU, he would say this is the temple of Zeus. But if he would go to this man's synagogue, he'd point to me, he would know exactly what's going on. So, this Rex here, she says, I think Jesus would recognize the church today as a natural development based on charity without the need for compulsion by additional laws, whereas Moses would not only recognize modern Judaism, but would contravene it by his faithful keeping of the law as he gave it. Talk about a major red flag. I don't know what he or she is talking about here. Why would it be okay for Christianity to evolve and Judaism to not evolve? I think that's the big question here. Meaning, meaning we recognize that Christianity. So put it another way. All right, as we said, we could have a Mass today, and St. Peter would recognize the altar and the Eucharist and the liturgy, but that's developed a lot in its finer exuberances. But he would recognize it. Post-Mosaic Jews would obviously recognize a shul or synagogue or what you would call it in its fundamentals, but everything you preach would be entirely alien. And I think if you're honest, you would have have to admit that. So I don't really recognize what aspect of the preaching. And again, you go into churches where things are being preached that are contrary to the gospel, contrary to I'm talking about the liberal churches. And so the same thing. You go to the liberal synagogues also. You're right. You're gonna find things that are contrary to the things that God gave Moses. Even so all right, you go to the conservative synagogue, in form it will be more traditional, but again, the teachings, the preachings go against the basics of Judaism. You go to an Orthodox synagogue, and you're not going to see things that are radically different than what is in the Bible. There are explanations that go beyond what's in the Bible. But if you really, if you read through the Bible, you read through, certainly, not only you read through the Jewish Bible, what the Christians call the Old Testament, you read through the Christian additions, the things that they added to the Bible that they call the New Testament, you will see a Judaism that has not really changed very much throughout 3,300 years. Certain things might culturally have changed, but the fundamental religious things have remained the same. But yet, there's still an evolution. Things do change. Even within Orthodoxy, there are changes, but it's not something anymore that Moses would not recognize any more than in this claim that Peter would not recognize. Certainly, if Peter were in a synagogue, let's forget about Moses for now. If Peter went to a synagogue today, he would know exactly what's going on. If Paul went to a synagogue today, he would know exactly what's going on. If Jesus went to synagogue today, he would know exactly what's going on. There are very, very few things that go on in a traditional Orthodox or conservative synagogue today that post-date that time, that post-date the era, really, even of the prophets, but certainly the synagogues that are mentioned in the Christian books that they call the New Testament. The things that went on there were mostly the same things that go on here. Maybe which psalms and which readings might be somewhat different, but the essential service, the essential liturgy is with, again, maybe a few different versions, different words here and there, but the essence of the liturgy has not changed since that time, and has not changed since the close of the Hebrew Bible, since the time of Malachi, the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. All right, maybe we say an extra psalm, an extra hymn here and there, just like the Christians also have, meaning the psalms are the same psalms, but maybe we didn't always say Psalm 30 at the beginning of our liturgy. Okay, I'll grant that. Of course, we have new hymns, just like the Christians have new hymns. But most of our hymns are pretty old. We don't have that many hymns that are less than 500 years old in our tradition. One of the few that I can think of is Koach Sof. Almost all the other hymns are very, very old. At least 500 years old. 400 or 500 years old. And Koach Sof, all right, that one's what? 200 years old. Maybe a little more than that. And that's not part of our liturgy. It's just a table hymn, a Sabbath table hymn. And okay, we have different piyutim, different things that were added through history. For the most part, a lot of those have been discarded or abandoned. Even though I personally like them. And as far as the preaching, one of the things mentioned here is charity, which I remember recently I was listening to a Catholic priest talking about the things he dislikes about Protestantism, the things he likes about Protestants and Protestantism. And one of the things he said is why he wishes his own Catholic Church would have the same fire and enthusiasm as Protestant churches. He says even though that enthusiasm in his view is misplaced and misguided, nonetheless, he sees, he's jealous of it. And I responded with a love and respect for the Catholic Church. I said that fire is in the Catholic Church, in the charitable works, in the homeless shelters, in the soup kitchens. Catholics really excel at those things, and so do Jews. We have tremendous amount of charitable work. It's probably one of the most important things that we preach about. Another thing, you go into regular Jew, because let's read the rest of this, because I'm really answering things here. So let's go a little bit further. Didn't Rabbi Akiva, because he was saying specifically Rabbi Akiva, invented the whole Judaism that we have today? So didn't Rabbi Akiva invent the whole reading between the lines to the extreme thing? To the point where everything the rabbis say in the Talmud is supposed to be believed retroactively to be part of the Torah, actually revealed by Moses, the thing about the crowns, etc. This is what I mean. They have a link there to Bim Bam video about, as I mentioned, a homily about Moses giving God gives Moses a revelation of Rabbi Akiva. The fact that Moses demoted having his own Rab is a disgrace. Moses' only Rab is Messiah, not Akiva. I don't know what this person is talking about. I mean, really, I should not be answering it except for the fact that I want to share these answers. So first of all, and I want to talk. I like to make videos, so I always like to have something to make a video about. So first of all, it wasn't Rabbi Akiva who said, "Kol man the asid Talmud Vasik l'chadish karnit el Moshe Sinai." It was Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. So Rabbi Joshua, the son of Levi, was the one who told us, who's quoted as saying that everything that a diligent and pious disciple of Torah will come up as a novel idea was already given to Moses at Sinai. Now, I know some liberal Jews understand that to mean that it means there's a sanctification of, I heard this from Judea Pearl, the father of the one who was killed, Daniel Pearl's father. I had a conversation with him once at the University of Richmond, not VCU, the other side of town, on the west side. Judea Pearl, he mentioned this. He said, in his view, that this means that in Judaism there's a sanctification of innovation. It's not exactly true, because, and so I was specifically talking to him about Zionism being an innovation. And then he said, he considers himself a secular Jew. And he said, I understand Herzl wasn't a Talmud Fasik. Herzl wasn't a diligent and pious disciple, but Rav Kook was. And there's a sanctity in Rav Kook's teachings, in his mind, as a secular Jew, which shows he's not that secular, unless we use secular, like the Catholic clergy talk about secular clergy and religious clergy, right? And so he's a secularist, not in the sense that he's not religious, that he's not a believer, but he's worldly. Seclorum means worldly, right? But still, nonetheless, anything that Rabbi Kook said that goes against the essence of Torah is not Torah. I'm sorry, with all due respect to my Rebbeim who were fans of his. But when he said that a Bechal Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael is on a higher madrega than Rosh Shiva in Chutz La'aretz, that's heresy. Doesn't mean he's a heretic. He had the bipolar disorder, and he could still have been a tzaddik. He could have still been a saint, but he was wrong there. And he's not infallible. He's fallible. He's not the Pope. Even if he was the chief rabbi, he made himself the chief rabbi. He invented the idea of the chief rabbi. This is someone from the 20th century, for those who don't know. Late 19th century, early 20th century. So the thing is, no, Rabbi Akiva, even in the story that was presented, Rabbi Akiva did not invent reading between the lines. He did not invent the crowns and making. And the thing is that a Chiddush in Torah is bringing the potential into the actual. That's the way we understand in the Orthodox world. I mean, you can't just make something up and say this is Torah. There's a system, there's a formula, there's an orthodoxy, there's a doctrine. It has to be within that realm. And because God's word is so infinite, there could have been things that Moses did not himself grasp that he brought to us. And also there were things that Moses taught that had been forgotten, but sometimes are relearned. It's because God gave us the tools to relearn the things that Moses taught, but the people forgot. And so this is, it's different than the way the Mormons see it, because we don't view it as prophecy. We have a concept that Chocham Adif Minavi, that a sage is greater than the prophet. Not to say that prophecy is lesser than intelligence, but rather that there's a form of progressive revelation, that the revelation was already given in the Torah, and that it's like the layers are being peeled back on what was revealed. But there's nothing that you go to a normal synagogue. I don't know if this person been to a synagogue, but what I hear is preached are stories and lessons that teach us things that are not radically different than the things other than our rituals that are also Christians, specifically traditional Christians, Catholics, Orthodox, have their rituals that are different than what the Protestants have. And of course, so too, we have our rituals, but our rituals are very ancient. Meaning the Christian Bible talks about phylacteries. And it doesn't say you should not put on phylacteries, you just shouldn't be ostentatious about them. You shouldn't be showing off. You should be humble. You shouldn't make them very wide and very big, like one group does. Interestingly, a group that also follows a false Messiah. But nonetheless, a lot of the things that you see in the discussions within the Christian Bible are very similar to discussions in the Talmud. It's not that radically different. You know, Jesus said that some people are hypocrites. They'll tell someone, take that speck out of your eye, but they ignore the beam in their own eye. That's in the Talmud also. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Alright, the Talmud was written down later. That I know. But the traditions predate Jesus. Jesus discusses with the Pharisees about marriage and divorce. Same type of discussions we find in the Talmud. And it seems that Jesus is following Beis Shammai there. And some scholars have thought maybe he was a Talmud of Beis Shammai. Even though whatever Yeshu that we have mentioned, which lived 100 years before Christian Jesus, he was a Talmud of Rabbi Akiva. We don't know if it's the same person. Probably not. Like the Bali Tosfos said, not everyone named Louis is the king of France. Right? When they were asked about this, not everyone named Yeshu is even Yeshu Anotri is the Jesus of the Christian Jesus. Anyway, that's really essentially the message I want to give. I don't hate Christians. I don't dislike Christians. I don't have a problem with them. But and the thing is, you want to share your religion with me, I don't have a problem with that either. Because I know it's sometimes coming from a place of love. You have something you really like, you want to share it with everybody. But this type of the arrogance that came out of this comment to say, oh, you're so blind to this. Well, the Mormons are going to say the same thing to you. The Muslims are going to say the same thing to you. And so you say the same thing to me. I'm just pointing out the world is not so, this. The other thing is in Zechariah, it says that when the real Messiah comes, all the people from all the nations will come and grab onto the garment if he was a Jew and say, let's go with you, for we heard God is with you. Why would they go with the Christians if the Christians are right? Right. So then the Christians say, well, the one who is a Jew is talking about Jesus. Alright, that's kind of silly. I understand you love Jesus a lot, that's why you're going to say that. But if someone, like, let's just, you go to a Buddhist and ask, read this text. I know you don't believe in it. I know you probably respect that other people do, because you're a respectful person. Tell me, does this sound like it's vindicating Judaism or Christianity? Anyone just reading that without a bias, I think would probably say it's vindicating Judaism. But we'll see what happens when it happens. I don't mind being patient. Like one of my rabbis said, Rabbi Ariel Bar Tzadok, he should be well. He said that what's the guy who wrote The Late Great Planet Earth, Hal Lindsey, said to him, he tried to convert, and Rabbi Bar Tzadok said to Hal Lindsey, to Dr. Lindsey, I don't care if you're right or I'm right. This is the first coming of Messiah, second coming of Messiah. It doesn't change much what I got to do. As long as we can both walk hand in hand and say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Alright, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later.